So Prey is the newest entry in the Predator franchise, and it is actually a prequel to 1987's Predator. This film follows Naru, a skilled female Comanche warrior, as she hunts down the Predator, while it simultaneously hunts her. Now, when it comes to the general thoughts about this film, I thought this movie was very, very good. I don't think it's as good as the original Predator film, but I do think it's the second best movie in the entire franchise. So I'll begin by talking about the things that I really liked about this film, and the first thing that I really freaking liked is the setting. This film is set 300 years ago in the Comanche Nation. And this is a setting that I really liked for 3 different reasons. I like this setting because, first of all, there are not many mainstream films told from the perspective of Native American people. So it is really cool to see this. It is really cool to see them in the forefront, being the leads of a Predator movie. That is pretty freaking cool. The second reason why I really like this setting is because it gives some freshness to the Predator franchise. We've had so many Predator films where people are fighting predators with machine guns and grenade, where they are fighting them with modern weapons. And it is really refreshing to see something new. It is really refreshing to see a Native Americans fighting a predator with bows and arrows, spears, axes, and traps. No machine guns, no explosions, no grenades. It is really refreshing, and I thought it was really freaking cool. And that brings me to my main concern coming into this film. And my main concern coming into this movie is, if Arnold Schwarzenegger struggled to defeat a predator with machine guns and grenades, I had no idea how a Native American could ever stand a chance. And honestly, I'm not going to say how, I'm not going to spoil it because this is a spoiler-free review, but I believe the film came up with some very clever ways for the protagonist to fight the predator. I felt like the script came up with some very clever reasons as to why this character is able to fight the predator in the first place. So even though I had this concern coming into this film, that proved not to be a problem, and I actually quite liked it. Now, the third reason why I thought this setting was great is because it brings the Predator back to what it's meant to be. Predator works best when it is a simple, small-scale story about a single human fighting a predator. The Predator doesn't need to be fighting an army. He doesn't need to be set loose in the city. He doesn't need to be fighting xenomorphs. You just need one person fighting a predator. That is good enough. That is intense enough. Predators work best when you have a simple story of a man and a predator hunting each other, fighting to see which of them will be the prey and which of them will be the predator. And that's exactly what this film does. You have a human and a predator hunting each other, and it is great. Now, when it comes to other things that I really liked about this film is I thought the characters were very good. Even though the relationship in between the protagonist and her brother was really great, and I like that relationship, my favorite relationship of the film, by far, has to be the one of the protagonist and her dog. What can I say? I love dogs. I miss my dog. I'm a huge dog person. And the dog in this film was really freaking great and very well trained. Holy shit, that's an amazing dog actor. And the last thing that I would like to highlight when it comes to things that I really freaking liked about this film are some of the most artistic / intellectual moments in this movie. I felt like this film had some great artistic shots showing you the predator-prey dynamic in nature and, showing you like the circle of life and how every single living being in this forest is part of this big thing called the circle of life. And these shots are also really freaking great because they also show you how the circle of life is completely destroyed and uprooted by the presence of the predator. The predator-prey dynamic is, of course, something very important to this film. After all, the film is called Prey, and the main villain is the predator. So I thought it was really clever to constantly show you scenes of the predator-prey dynamic in nature. I thought that was really freaking great. Now, when it comes to the intellectual aspects of this film, something that I really freaking liked is the similarities that the film draws in between the predator and colonizers. In a way, I'm not going to spoil it, I'm not going to tell you how, but in a way, you could honestly read this film and you could honestly interpret the predator as a symbolic representation for colonialism and the effects that colonialism has on a self-sustaining environment. So yeah, I thought that was pretty clever. I came into this film expecting blood and guts and violence and action, and I ended up getting a film with all of the action and with all of that fun, bloody stuff, but with also some intellectual and artistic, thoughtful things. So I really liked it. Now, there are some things that I didn't like about this film. That said, I won't be able to truly go into detail because those things that didn't quite work for me are spoilers, so I can't mention them. But out of the things that I can mention, I will say that the first half of this film, it is a bit too slow. The first 40 minutes of this film can drag quite a bit. And the last 40 minutes are amazing. The final fights, the final bloody confrontations are really freaking great. But the first 40 minutes, they can drag. Just a bit. They're fine, they're good, and, they're developing the characters. But they do drag. Now, another thing that I didn't like that much about this film is the way in which the Predator is dealt with by the end of the film. Once again, I'm not going to spoil it, but for me, at least, the way the Predator was, dealt with felt a bit cheap and a bit too easy, if I'm being honest. And now, the last thing that I have to say when it comes to things that didn't quite work for me when it comes to this film is the fact that some of the CGI, particularly when they do fully CG animals, some of that CGI didn't quite work. It was good, it was fine, but it wasn't great. So in conclusion, Prey is easily the best out of the Predator sequels/prequels. It is a very good film that brings the Predator franchise back to where it belongs. If I were to give it a score in between 1 to 10, I would give it a 7 out of 10, which means I thought this film was very good.